You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me. Hey friends, welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Pam Fields and I'm so glad you stopped by. We hope that every time you visit, you find encouragement for the day. I know we have been having a lot of fun just already chatting and getting to know one another. I have the best job or hobby, I guess, in the world. I get to meet new people and introduce them to you. And it's amazing the way God works to connect people. I know that if you are listening today, there is a purpose for it. So let's jump in. Julie, you're a wife, mom, and a writer, and you've been through some really tough stuff in your life, but you continue to walk in the hope of Christ and his care for your family. So take us into your story and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Pam. I'm glad to be here and to be sharing. When I was a young wife, my expectations were pretty much shattered one day when I heard the words, "Your baby does not have a heartbeat." And that kind of sent me down a very dark road. It actually led to another appointment about 2 weeks later to verify that that was the truth. And during that week or two, I was just I held on to hope, thinking that God would not do this to me, and my baby's going to be fine. And it was our first pregnancy. We had waited a number of years, my husband and I, before we tried to have a family. And so we were very much expecting and anticipating this baby. And the second appointment ended as badly as the first. And my heart was just shattered. And my world completely whirled out of control for me. I went into a very dark place. I guess I think of it as, I kind of describe it as the color pretty much drained out of my life at that point. And I felt very alone. My husband was there, but he was grieving very differently than I was. And we lived 6 hours, I think, from my family and several hours from his, and nobody had experienced miscarriage before. So nobody could really relate that I knew that could relate. And so it was a pretty dark season for me. And I don't know how long. I really can't remember how long I stayed in the pit of depression, but it was quite some time. And I remember just not even wanting to get out of bed. And the Lord decided that enough was enough. I think of my pity party. And I was very self-absorbed. And so he sent a dream to me one night. And that dream was him holding my baby. And it was very real. And I could see, and I assume it was him. It was some hands holding her up for me to see. And she was a few months old and very beautiful, as we all know our babies are. And he just impressed into my spirit that she's fine. And I heard, I didn't hear, I felt, I don't know how you describe that, but it was, this is Sarah. She's with me and she's fine. Now you need to get up and live. And that did not completely take away my depression, but it woke me up enough to start reconsidering who this God was that I had pretty much given up on at that point. And just to kind of go back and set things kind of so you knew where my mind was at that point. I was a Christian. I was baptized into the faith and went to church most Sundays. As an adult, I fell away a little bit through college, but very much believed in a God, believed in a sovereign God, believed in a creator God, but I didn't really know who he was. And I had expectations that were not true to who God is. And that did not serve me well, because my expectations set me up for some real rocky roads through the journey of miscarriage and disability. And so that my first miscarriage was before we had any children. And after God sent me that dream, I did start living again. I started, my husband and I decided we wanted to continue trying to have children, and I went through a brief period of infertility. And so pursued a little bit of help with that. And then over, it was like an 8-year span, I did end up having 4 children, and I miscarried 5 times over that time.
Wow.
And they were kind of interspersed. So I would go through my faith was a very much a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It was very much tied to my feelings and my
Mm.
circumstances, which is not a
Mm-hmm.
good place. It's not a good anchor for your
Mm.
faith. I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
And so when we had a live birth, and we had, after my first miscarriage, we had two little boys very close together. Again, things were shaken a bit because our firstborn was born with an arm disability. His arm was not, had no blood flow to it, and it had sores all over it. And he was rushed to the neonatal, thinking perhaps he had an infection that was going to, could take his life
Wow.
pretty easily
Uh-huh.
as a newborn. And that was very traumatic. At the same time, I had this rash, so they wouldn't even let me see him in the neonatal
Oh,
unit. And so you can just imagine the trauma of all of that,
oh
especially on the
yeah.
heels of a miscarriage. And so then we pursued some interventions for him, some help for his arm, and so that really kind of consumed our time.
Yeah.
And then I quickly became pregnant and had a second little boy, and they were only,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're 16 months apart, the two
Uh-huh.
boys are. And so things seemed like, okay, I got this now, and
Yeah.
this is good. And then I had 2 more miscarriages after the boys, and then I had our daughter, and then I had 2 more miscarriages, and I had our little boy.
Up and
And
down and up and
up and
down.
down and up and down. And that's exactly, like I said, that's exactly how my faith was going, because it was just
Yeah.
not anchored in who God is. It was anchored in who I thought he was, which was very different from who he is. And so I had to kind of, I wrestled a lot with why God would allow. I hate to say this, because I hate to use the word why, because now as I look back on all those years, Pam, I don't think why would have made it better.
Mm.
And I don't think God explaining why he allows things is going to suddenly take away my pain. It's not going
Right.
to do it.
Right.
But what, but I needed to see that God was still with me, and still near me, and still had a plan, and was in control, and that his control was a good thing. Because way back
Yeah.
when, before I had my first miscarriage, I believed in a sovereign God, but after my first miscarriage, I didn't think his sovereignty was such a good thing, because obviously he was
Mm.
controlling things. He had a plan, and he allowed this for some reason, and I didn't agree with him allowing it. And so his sovereignty wasn't very comforting. But
Mm.
as my story continues, and I'll explain more of it as I go, I have learned so much about the Lord, and about how beautiful his sovereignty truly is, and how I can take comfort in that, because of the whole nature of God, because of his other attributes, is why I can take comfort in his sovereignty now, because I know he's also loving, and he's also gracious, and he's also omniscient. So he has a reason that I don't have, and he's unfathomable, incomparable. So I can't understand him, but I've learned to trust him. So just backing up a little bit,
Mhm.
within the miscarriages, she was our only daughter, so we were very thrilled to get a little girl finally. And we didn't know anything was wrong until, just it was probably later that same day, after she was born, when the doctor just
Okay.
came in and said, well, she's got a little hole in the roof of her mouth, but otherwise she's checking out pretty good, and it's called a cleft palate. And
Uh-huh.
hers did not affect her visually at all, so it was only in the soft
Okay.
palate. And he said it will just affect her feeding, but about 11 months they'll do a surgery, and that'll take care of things. And so we felt pretty good about that. And I remember talking to my mom and just saying, yeah, we have our little girl, and she's perfect. She just has a little hole in the roof of her mouth, but that'll be fixed, and we'll all be just fine. And it wasn't the way I expected things would go.
Mm.
And so about 6 weeks, she quit breathing on us. And we found out that she had it wasn't a heart issue. She did have some heart issues, but they were fairly minor. But she had a very severe reflux condition gastroesophageal reflux condition, and that caused her to stop breathing
Wow.
when the acid would come up and scorch her throat. So we were sent home with a monitor and just assured that if she quit breathing, she would pass out, but she would start breathing again. So we didn't need to worry. That really didn't calm me a whole lot, but, but
No, no. And as equipped you are, this is your third child. You're like,
our third
I
child.
know how to take care of a baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
You throw
Mm-hmm.
that into the mix, and all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute. This,
Mm-hmm.
this is outside my realm of training. I
Mm-hmm.
have not been
Mm-mm.
trained for this. Are you
No.
sure? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Just felt very uncertain of what things were. And we still, she was a very happy, but very, very content, almost like scary content.
Mm.
And, and later on, as we started to realize she was not meeting her developmental milestones, that's when that became even scarier, because it was pretty obvious she was not developing like she should. And in many ways, physically, she could not crawl, she couldn't sit up on her own. Um, and intellectually, we didn't really notice things until she got a little bit older, where we were realizing she wasn't talking and things like that. So then that all kind of rolled out. She was probably maybe 2.5 years old when we got our first diagnosis of what she had. Meanwhile, we were just kind of working with a developmentally delayed diagnosis, is what they start with, until they
Right.
can actually pinpoint stuff. And we went through some genetic testing and kind of ran all those fields. I was pretty desperate at that time, Pam, to get some sort of diagnosis. I wanted
Yeah.
an answer. I wanted the why. I wanted, why was she delayed? Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I was really holding on to that. And I also really felt very strongly in wanting a roadmap, because I like to see the problem and I like to solve the problem. I was raised with boys,
Yes.
and so that mentality is very much, let's fix this. That
Right.
was very much in my being. And
Right.
so
And
I yeah,
the roadmap not only tells you what's going on and where you're supposed to go, but it tells you how long each step is. Like each path, part of the journey is got an end, right? But
yeah. And what
if
to
you don't have a
expect.
roadmap, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't know.
And what to expect. Is there going to be more stuff down the road that I can prepare myself for?
Yeah.
I know, with children with Down syndrome, you can expect certain things. You can expect some heart conditions. You can expect some thyroid issues, and we didn't have that. And so the again, the why was very important to me, so I could try to fix it, and thinking that I can handle things. And it took a long time for me to come to the point where I realized I could not handle things. So we got this diagnosis, and it was called velocardial syndrome, or
Hmm.
VCFS for short, also called Sprinson syndrome. And it has a lot of midline ish, like,
Okay.
conditions, which is what she had.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's
Yep.
kind of what they based it on. But I knew in my heart that that was not what she had. I just knew it. It just didn't fit. I did do my own research, which can be bad, but I do my own
Right.
research, and realized she just really didn't fit the pattern very well. And so I emailed the actual doctor who named the syndrome, and he was out of New York. And I emailed him, not really expecting a reply, but just, it was another step that I could
Yeah.
do, something I could do. And I sent him all of her pictures and everything, and he emailed me back almost, I think, the next day maybe, and just said, no, she doesn't have it. This girl does not have
Wow.
velocardial syndrome. So that was actually another blow, because
Wow.
I wanted a diagnosis. I wanted to know. And honestly, it's kind of, I guess, comical in a sad way, or I that we still don't have a diagnosis. And in a way, it is kind of comical, because I wanted one so badly. I was so desperate for one, because then I felt I could solve it. And I think in God's wisdom, He's like, nope, you're not going to get one, because you can't solve it anyway. So you're not even going to get a diagnosis. Then you don't have to worry about it.
How old is she now?
She's 26,
And you
living with
still don't
us.
have a
We
diagnosis.
still don't have a diagnosis. No, we other things were thrown out. We were told that she might have dwarfism of some sort, but she was born full size, so that didn't really. She does have
Hmm.
tiny hands and tiny feet, and what they call microcephaly, which means a smaller head. But then they measured my head and said, "Well, I had microcephaly too." So sounds to me like it's just a inherited thing from
Yeah.
mom. But
Yeah.
um, so yeah, so it was there were some really tough things I had really had to wrangle through. My lack of control was a big one. My
Yeah.
my pride, I think, at not being able to solve and control and make things better was a huge one. Learning to accept my daughter for the beautiful girl that she is
Mhm.
was a hurdle that we addressed at about when she was about 4 years old. We decided to go to a training program for my husband and I. It was for the child, but it wasn't with the child. And it was really, they really centered on the parents to begin with and how we relate to our children. And
Okay.
it was not a Christian based program, but the Lord knew right where we needed to be, at least right where I needed to be. And it was huge for me. It was where I really came to terms with my brokenness and my inability to solve things. I had to let go of my strength. I had to let go of what I thought I could control and my desire and need for the why in the roadmap. And I was a sobbing mess during that conference. They had provided counselors, and I needed that counselor. And I just poured my heart out to her, and was very open and vulnerable. And I needed that because I needed to acknowledge that I couldn't solve the problem, and I needed to
Yeah.
realize, and that really started me on the road to realizing that God was the one who could handle
Hmm.
my problems, and He
Hmm.
was strong enough in my, and that's what He says. My grace is sufficient enough, and it's there for my weakness. His my weakness is His strength, and that's I needed to come to that point where I could surrender my strength. And I need to do that all the time because I do have that problem thinking I can control things. And I'm probably the only one.
Isn't it interesting that we know the Lord holds all sorts of mystery and we cannot
Yeah.
even fathom, but yet we still insist on knowing the answers
Yeah.
and knowing the why? It's still a mystery for you, but
Yeah.
yet you know that God knows the answer and that you
Mm-hmm.
can trust Him in this
Mm-hmm.
story and in her story as well.
Yeah. And that was so important for not only, because then I had two miscarriages after her as well before our little guy was born. He's not so little anymore, but it was so important that I could start to surrender that and to surrender the why, because the why continues. The why continues in the in the miscarriage, my other miscarriages. Our one son had learning disabilities, and our oldest one has another health condition. And then my daughter, her future is very uncertain in our eyes, because what happens, she's still living with us, what happens when my husband and I are gone. And so it was really, the Lord knew exactly that. It's such a beautiful thing to know that we have such a personal God. He knows exactly what each of us needs, and we don't see it, and I didn't want it this way. But what I can see so clearly, that I had to let go of my whys for the most part. I still kind of I grab them back once in a while, and to surrender my control and my strength. And again, I grab those back too often, uh, because I need to know that he is the strength for the future. I don't have the ability to be there. He's already there. I don't have the knowledge of what's going to happen. He knows everything. I don't have the power to take care of it. I don't have the power to do much of anything really, and he has unlimited power. Um, and the kindness, I know I've seen His kindness, I've seen His
Mhm.
generosity, and I know He's a generous, gracious God. And I know I can count on that for the future, when we have to either let go of her in some way, whether that means just moving out of the house, whether that means some health issue pops up, and we can't take care of it, or who knows what's going to happen. And when my husband and I are no longer here, as when I it's like that story with Peter in the Bible. When Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he walked on water. And as soon as he took them off and looked at his circumstances, he went under. And that's exactly how it is with me. There's so many times that I allow myself to look at my circumstances in the future with Rachel, and I panic and I go under. And then the Lord reminds me graciously that He's my strength, and I look to Him, and I walk on water again. And I just love that about the Lord. And it's not just, um, He knew it needed to start. Uh, he knew that I needed to go through the things I went through in order to be able to look to Him so that I could walk on water when I needed to.
Hmm. From the time of the diagnosis or
Mhm.
non-diagnosis, maybe,
Yeah, yeah.
um, while you walked through all these circumstances, did you have a community around you that responded to your needs?
That's interesting. Um, we have both have loving families and love them to death. But like I said, they did not experience miscarriage,
They
and at
lived
that
far
point,
away.
and they lived kind of far away. And at
Yeah.
that point, there wasn't really disability in our families either. So
Mm,
yeah, I had a very nice, a wonderful childhood. I loved my childhood, and not much rocked it really. We were kind of insulated from stuff and grew up on a farm, so we kind of just stayed with them within ourselves, and so I didn't have the ability um, to handle, um, to understand, and to cope with the things that would come my way at that time.
okay.
And I think that's what the Lord really needed to do for me. And so we didn't have a lot. We were really in the middle of trying to search for a church home.
Mhm.
We were came from different faith backgrounds, and
Okay.
so we did not have a church home at that time. So that
Yeah.
wasn't a source of great comfort. We would attend, but we didn't really have people who knew us very much.
Right.
And then when we moved, when our older two boys were 2, 3, and 4, or 2 and 3, something like that, we moved to where we basically where we live now, not the same house, but in the same area. And we joined a church, and so we started to really have community around us in the forms of church family.
Yeah.
And that was really, really wonderful for the next two miscarriages that I
Mm,
went through, and with Rachel as well, because she was born while we were here. And so people have it's been a huge difference in when you have people that can come alongside you. And they didn't necessarily understand it either, but they were there to say, we love you and we're walking with you. And I remember one of them gave me Oswald Chambers' devotion, My
mhm.
Utmost. Yeah, and it was a wonderful companion guide for me. And even when I was angry, which I, I did have a lot of anger toward God, but some of those little quick reads, when
Yeah.
maybe even when I couldn't open my Bible, I could maybe take something like that in.
Yeah.
So that was nice, and just knowing other people. I did, because we don't have a diagnosis. I became pretty desperate for other people who could relate. So, which
Right.
is hard. If you have a child with autism, as hard as that is, you have all kinds of
A
autism
support
support
group.
groups.
Yeah.
Same thing with Down syndrome. Same thing with when you have a diagnosis. There really isn't anything that I know of besides just a general special need resources out there. There really isn't much to step back. And so at one point in school, I worked with a counselor, and we actually started a support group for people who had children who had learning disabilities and other more physical disabilities and intellectual disabilities
Right.
as well. So we started our
Right.
own, which was really healing for me. And we did that for a year or two. And I also joined a group that spoke. It was actually sponsored through our education system in the state of Iowa, where it was called Parents as Presenters, and you learned. They felt it was important for parents to tell their stories, and so they gathered parents of children with disabilities and taught us how to tell our stories. And that was really healing, to be around people who also experienced great suffering and wanted to share for one reason. And again, it wasn't a Christian based thing. And not everybody there probably were Christian, but it was very healing for me to be around them. And then it was healing to start telling our story. And it was a safe environment to tell it in, because I was a school, I was, got my teaching degree. So I have taught in schools before. And so I'd go into universities or colleges and talk to to pre-education students. So they would know kind of what an IEP and Iowa individual
Mm.
education plan looked like, and
Yep.
some of those
Mhm.
other things that you deal with when your children have disabilities or learning disabilities. So that was also another source of it was something for me to do, something for me to control maybe, and to step into when I couldn't solve the problems right at hand. And so it kind of gave me an outlet, I think was really important. Plus it gave me access to other people who were also struggling, and we could take comfort from each other and encourage each
Yeah.
other.
Right. Be each other's strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
Hmm.
yeah, in that sense, community was very important, and we still continue. I continue to take great comfort from our church family. They welcome
Hmm.
Rachel wholeheartedly. We aren't a very big church, so we don't have like
Yeah.
a special need ministry,
Right.
but I have never felt like any of them ever thought Rachel didn't belong. And she can be somewhat inappropriate, and it's hard to keep her. Well, she's enthusiastic and she worships with abandon, and it's a little bit different in our church. So it's fun when she's got hands raised and you know yelling about home when people she means heaven, and a lot of people don't they think she might want to go home, but she really means heaven when she's pointing up. So and her faith has been very convicting and very beautiful for me to see and grow through, and the Lord do. That's another thing I needed, was to really see the faith of a child always in action, and that's what she shows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how much we can all learn by her
Mm-hmm.
abandon. Like her
Mm-hmm.
her she's
Oh, it's
just
beautiful. Mm-hmm.
she's not worried about what people are saying or thinking, and she doesn't
No,
care if they're not raising their hands or
no.
dancing in the aisles or whatever, like that's, I wish I could be more like that. I'm a
Oh,
lot more
absolutely.
concerned about everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other just amazing thing about her is just the way she loves people. She loves as close to Christ as anybody that I know. She loves everybody, and it doesn't matter if they stink. It doesn't matter if they have um, clothes they just pulled out of the garbage, or if they're wearing clothes that are, cost $1,000. It doesn't matter if they are the president of the United States, or if they are a janitor. It doesn't matter anything about the person. She just loves them, and she wants to
Yeah.
give hugs to everybody, which is a little bit disconcerting for a mom, because you want them to
Right.
have a little bit of a
Boundary.
self-awareness. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
boundary there. And
Yeah.
she doesn't, but it's also, I think it's also a glimpse into the love that the Lord has for us. Um, and I think that's exactly why she's here, is to show people that love.
Mm. So you've been doing a little bit of writing, and I think
Yes, I
it's
am.
because one of the things that spoke to you were these little devotionals, right? That were very
Mm-hmm.
consumable for a mom
Mm-hmm.
that was busy and maybe didn't have hours and hours of study yet. That word in a devotional will really power you through. Tell me a little bit about the work you've been doing.
Yeah. Well, it actually came out of a great need of mine to, because I tell you that I keep grabbing control, and I keep grabbing back all these things that I shouldn't grab back, that I've
Yep.
thought of surrendered, because I forget. I grab back my anger or my sadness or my control, because I forget that the Lord has it. And
Mhm.
so I was pouring out some lament about Rachel's future again, which I tend to grab back as well. And I was just really kind of concerned about what would happen. And I was writing that in a blog post, and I finally kind of I had to talk to myself sort of sternly, and it's like, but I know the Lord is sovereign, and I know He knows what's going on. He has a plan. And I know, and then it started kind of as a prayer. I know, Lord, that you are loving, and that you love Rachel more than I do. And I know, so I started kind of, I know you're omniscient, and I know that you are already in the future, And so all of these things I started pouring out, um, and it was so comforting to me. And so I realized that I needed to share that with other people, because
Mhm.
we forget.
Right.
All through I look back on my whole faith journey, and all through my walk, I keep taking things back. I've surrendered, and I keep forgetting the Lord. Something I just learned from Him 5 minutes
Hmm.
ago, I tend to forget,
Hmm.
and I walk in my feelings, when our feelings are so fickle. And that roller coaster, I never want to go back to that roller coaster faith I had. You can't anchor your faith in your feelings, because feelings lie. Your heart lies. The Lord talks about how wicked the heart is and how deceiving it can be. And so I proposed this to my agent, and he liked the idea of making that into a book. And so we pitched it to a publisher, and I said, I had at the time, I wanted to talk about 30 of God's attributes, because I figured 30 is it's a pretty nice number. And, I can do 30 attributes, right? There's all those omnis. You got omniscient, omnipresent,
Right.
and omnipotent.
There you
So that's
go.
3 of them right there. So I can do all these
Right.
30. Well,
Yeah.
the publisher loved the idea, but came back and said, well, okay, we really want this to be a little bit of a meatier book. How about doing 60? And I'm like, 60. You give me a contract, I can do 60. Of course I can. Again, my control speak, my strong, whatever, stupidity
Right.
thinking here. And so I went into it thinking, okay, all right. And the Lord revealed himself in such amazing ways. I got to 30 and it's like, okay, this is hard. I got to 40 and it's like, I'm not sure I can do anymore.
Then it's like
I
lean in,
did
lean in.
lean in. And exactly. I found out so many things about the character of God and about how trustworthy he is and his, how all of his attributes are just so perfect. And I, one of the great things I realize is how we can't understand how mysterious he is. He is just, you cannot understand the God of the universe. But also how comforting that is, because if we could understand him, what a small God we would be serving. And I needed to know we had a God far bigger than any of my problems. And his character demonstrates that in such a beautiful way. There's so much about his individual attributes that combined all together into this perfectly beautiful, wondrous, magnificent,
Uh-huh.
incomparable God, um, allows us to be able to trust him really unconditionally for anything that we face,
Mm-hmm.
because he's there. He already knows what's going to happen. He's already got a plan for it. And yes, he allows suffering, but he has a purpose in allowing that suffering. And when we get to know the Lord, we can see that in a clear light. We won't ever completely understand it, but isn't that one of the beautiful things about the Lord, is that we
Mm-hmm.
can't completely understand it, especially with, given my little pea brain. If I could understand him, he would be pretty small. So yeah, that's where the book came out of. Sometimes I forget 60 reminders of hope for your hard days. It does look at 60 attributes of God. And I don't want people to think you can just take an attribute of God and hang your hat on that. They really all work together in perfect unity. God isn't more loving than he is just, and he isn't more oh magnificent than he is caring. And so all of those work together in just perfect harmony, so that we can trust him fully. And yes, we're human, and yes, we fall, and we will continue to need those reminders. And I need those reminders. And so I figured other people did too. So
Yeah.
that's why I wrote the book.
Well, there's the verse that talks about posting on the door frames, on the doorposts of our
Yes.
home, right? And
Yes.
I've always thought of that verse in relation to my children, right? Like I'm supposed to put things on the doorposts to remind my children. But really, we need those reminders
Oh,
as a mom
desperately.
just as much as we need to be
Mm-hmm.
putting them in front of our children.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is a great resource, a tool to put in your hands that you could just pick up and continue to look to the character qualities of God, and that will refocus us. Don't take your eyes off of Jesus.
Yeah.
Don't take your eyes off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put links in the show notes of all the places where people can find you and they can find the book. I'll have a link to Amazon, but I want you to tell me your website and then tell me what social places you're at.
Sure. Yeah. My website is just juliesunny.com. And I'm on most of the socials. I don't do TikTok yet, but I'm on Insta and Facebook. Sometimes you have to find me at Julie Sunny One, because there is another Julie Sunny out there. So it's either Julie Sunny or Julie Sunny One, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those, Pinterest.
Wow, you're
And
busy.
yeah, well, I don't do them all equally well, but
Right, 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 right.
I have a presence there. But I would love
Yeah,
to connect with anybody. I love to encourage you. We need each other. As you've said, Pam, we need community. Community is so important, and I know it was important in my life looking back, and it continues to be. And so we shouldn't go this journey alone, and I don't want people
right.
to. And so if you want to walk with me, I would love to go on the journey with you and just encourage each other.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Ladies, if you are looking for another place to belong and connect with women with all sorts of backgrounds and history and things to talk about, make sure you find me on Facebook as well. I've got a mom's group over there called Tending Fields Moms Group. And I'd love to have you within our community there. Julie, as we wrap up, would you just pray for the women listening today as they head into the next week and all the things, the adventure that the Lord has still hidden as a mystery, just waiting to be revealed?
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. I'd love to pray. Dear Lord, oh, we got so many precious hearts listening now, Lord, and you love them so much. But life can get heavy and hard. And when we have expectations that are just shattered, Lord, it's difficult sometimes to keep our eyes focused on you, and then we sink. Instead of putting our eyes on our circumstances, Lord, just remind us that you are already there. Gently lift our chins and help us to focus again on you. Remind us of your love and your generosity and your grace. And yes, your omnipotence and your sovereignty, all the things, Lord, your unfathomable nature that we can count and we can trust on you. You are trustworthy and you are faithful. Remind me of that, Lord. Remind them that they don't have to do this alone in physically either, that there's others that can come alongside them, that that they need to seek out community and walk with others that are also struggling, Lord, and that we can continue to trust you with what we can't see, knowing that you are already in our future and that you already have a plan for all of that, Lord. Lord, when their hearts are tender, just comfort them. Just help them to rest in your presence. Even when they can't utter a word, just let them rest in you, Lord, and in your loving embrace. And Lord, we just lift up your name and just worship you and praise you, Lord, because you are so loving and you are a God that is so worthy of our worship and our praise. And Lord, may we glorify you in our days, and even in our pain, Lord, may we turn to you and say, you are God, and we will trust you, Lord, and help our unbelief when we need your strength. Just give us your strength. And I just pray all of that and your comfort and your love to all who are listening, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for being here. Ladies, thank you for being part of our neighborhood. We'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye. I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true.